Hey everyone, I'm so excited about today's episode, but first want to let you know that this show is made possible by FortuneBuilders. I also want to take a minute to invite you guys to an amazing opportunity to learn from some of the top experts in the real estate industry about how to get started in real estate or scale an existing business to the next level. FortuneBuilders is hosting a one-day webinar to help you learn about real estate investing in today's market. So throughout the show, if you feel like you're ready to get started, go to FortuneBuildersShow.com to register. Again, that's FortuneBuildersShow.com to register. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you'll find a link right below the show so you can get there that way as well. And please remember that the content of this show and every show is for educational purposes only. Myself or our guests are not going to be providing any legal, financial, or professional advice. If we share specific results, they are attributed to an individual or a business, and we can't guarantee the results will happen for you, those earnings or the income will match those figures. The bottom line is there's always risk when investing in real estate. You can make a lot of money or you can lose a lot of money, and it's hard work. But that doesn't mean we can't have fun doing it. So let's get into today's episode.
From a team that has $1 billion in real estate investment experience. A show to help you learn the strategies and systems it takes to get started investing in real estate. This is the Fortune Builders Real Estate Investing Show.
Hello, everyone. This is JD Asajan, as my nieces and nephews call me, Uncle JD. But you can call me JD, Mr. Asajan, bro. What up, dude? Here, excited for another awesome podcast with some very important information. Super excited to talk. We just got done with one of our bootcamp summits at Fortune Builders, and it reminded me as I was teaching that there are some very specific systems that we cover and do on the rehab side of things, teach, train, have systems around running our CTOM's business. And I thought I'd break down one of those important systems, and that's specifically the 6 critical and very important, some might say critical, documents that we use in our residential redevelopment business. Now, there are more than 6 for sure, but I'm going to cover 6 very important, some might say critical documents. As always, we gotta discuss or tease you with our term of the week. Ooh, that sound just gets in your soul, in your body. The term of the week is Independent Contractor Agreement, ICA for short. Now, depending on the industry that, depending on the industries that you've been in or the work that you've done, you might have heard of an independent contractor agreement. It's not specific to real estate per se, but I'm going to talk about it as it relates to our real estate business and specifically our residential redevelopment business, rehabbing homes, in this show. So it's a very important document. It's the foundation of our relationship with our contractors, and we're going to discuss that amongst 5 other very important, critical documents. You know what? Let's get into it. All right, everyone, welcome back, and excited to get rolling here on some very important topics around residential redevelopment. But for those of you that were watching the last case study that Dan and I did recently and were wondering about the lunch, the Del Taco that we were having for lunch on that day, and if we, how it was, if we survived, it was great, and we did. It's a tasty treat, but we're not going to discuss Del Taco hot sauce on this call or on this podcast. We're going to discuss a very important part of, and should be a very important part of your business if you're rehabbing homes, improving properties, and that's keeping yourself safe. Construction is a lot of things. It's, now it's becoming more costly because material costs and labor costs have gone up. Supply chain issues have made it a longer process, but it's always been a risky endeavor. You have, grown men and women with power tools working on your job site. If you're not protecting yourself properly, if you're not keeping yourself and the contractor safe, with good solid paperwork, then you're opening yourself up to a tremendous amount of additional risk that you don't need to. And so that is what I'm going to discuss today. Now, as always, if we're talking about contracts and we're talking about paperwork, if you're using something or if you're part of our community and invested in our systems and are using ours, you should always have them reviewed by your attorneys, local attorneys in your marketplace. Now, our documents have been created and reviewed by attorneys, but I always like to disclose that because your market may be different. And so if you're going to take the information, as I hope you would from this show, and look at implementing it with regards to paperwork, then you should certainly review and discuss with a local attorney in your market just to make sure that you're compliant. Now, we've always run our business with systems, whether it's acquisitions, whether it's redevelopment, whether it's sales, whether it's hiring, whether it's logistical, on and on and on, raising money with systems. But when it comes to rehabbing, early on in our career, 2004, when Paul and I were developing and growing our residential redevelopment business of rehabbing homes, we got very specific and very detailed into the different stages of the project, okay, and then specifically the different pieces of paperwork, contracts that we should use just with our contractors. So we have 7 stages of our rehab process, meaning there are 7 buckets of things that we should be doing on every property to keep ourselves on task. First and foremost, there's some initial walkthrough. You go to the home for the first time, you estimate repairs, you determine layouts, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's a longer definition than we have for this particular show, but walking through the home, then you have creating your scope of work. What are you going to do? Why are you going to do it? What's going to go here? What's going to go there? Paint colors, landscaping, all those types of things. Then there's a process of contractor and job bidding. Now you have to have contractors or have been marketing for contractors to do that, right? You got to know contractors or find them, get the job bidded out, confirm your estimate of repairs, make sure that the work that you have scoped, it can be done for the budget, right? Those kinds of things. Then there's a process of contract signing. And that's really what I'm going to focus on primarily on this show is those contracts. Then once the contracts are signed, you actually can start the rehab. Now that's the 5th thing. The rehab is stage 5 of the 7 stages. And there's a reason for that. While it's usually the longest stage and, can be the most fun, it can certainly be the opposite of that if you're not following, certain protocols and steps. So that's stage 5. Stage 6 is the contract closeout. Final permit, sign off, get final lien waivers, make final payments, punch list. And then the last stage 7 is these final touches, things that you do to get the home ready for the marketplace. Cleaning, staging, professional photography, prepare a listing, market online, those types of things, okay? Those are the 7 stages. What I want to do is just focus on stage 4, and that's contract signing. Okay, now, the stage 1 initial walkthrough, there's a lot that goes into locating and sourcing properties, of course. We've talked about it on other shows, but if you're thirsting for more inventory in your pipeline and you want to really get dialed in with how we do that so you have more to rehab, go to FortuneBuildersShow.com and get signed up for one of our classes taught by one of our top trainers around finding and funding property, because what I'm talking about here on the rehab side isn't as effective if you don't have something to rehab. So go to FortuneBuildersShow.com. If you're listening, if you're watching this show, then you can click on the link below the show to go to that same place and get registered for one of those classes. So we're going to focus on stage 4, the contract signing stage, and the 6, yes, ladies and gentlemen, around the world, around the globe, boys and girls, 6 critical documents that we should be, if we're renovating homes, signing with each and every contractor that we are paying. Now, if you're just hiring a general contractor and they are doing all the work and then they're managing and hiring the subs, then you would sign this set of 6 documents with that one contractor. if you are hiring a general contractor to do 40% of the work, and then you are going to independently hire the other subs that are going to do the rest of the 60% of the work, then you would sign these 6 critical documents, as we call them, with each and every one of those subs that you are paying money for their services. And there's reasons why we use these documents. Of course, I'm going to talk about that here. That's the intent of this show. But it's important. It's important that as a business owner, you do things to keep yourself safe, to keep people on task, and to also run a better business. And this is one of those. If you're rehabbing houses and are redeveloping property, residential, commercial, buying and holding, because there's probably going to be some repositioning of the property as well. So the first document we're going to talk about is our term of the week. Ooh, that sound. And that is the Independent Contractor Agreement, the ICA. The Independent Contractor Agreement in our system is a 3-page, sometimes 3.5-page document. Got a copy right here in my hands that is the rules of engagement, if you will, with the party that you're signing them with. In this case, contractor or subcontractor. It spells out things like, when are we starting? When are we scheduled to finish? What is the cost of the job that I'm hiring them to do? We attach exhibits like Exhibit A, the scope of work. What is the scope that they're doing? Exhibit B, how are we paying them? When are we paying them? It discusses how insurance is handled. It discusses how things like change orders are handled, job site cleanliness, taxes and building permits. There's a lot in here. It's a legal document. And it is designed that if the contractor is doing their job appropriately and we're doing our job appropriately, it keeps everyone safe, okay? It's so important when you work with someone in this activity and you're exchanging services for money that it isn't just a handshake agreement. And there are lots of reasons why that's the case. Certainly people, and then you can write this down if you'd like. There's a very technical term, it might even be a medical term. I'm not a doctor, so I can't verify that. It's called selective amnesia. Now, again, I didn't go to medical school, and some of you out there might be MDs, doctors, and have gone to medical school, but selective amnesia is probably not something you're going to find in the medical book text, but it is what it says. People tend to remember, we all do, tend to remember things or not remember things when it suits us in the moment. If you have a discussion with someone, a contractor in this activity, and you say, okay, and you verbalize it, okay, here's how change orders get handled. We are going to, before you do the work, I need to know about this additional work that has come up that is needed. We're going to discuss it. We're going to negotiate the price. We're going to get it in writing. We're both going to sign it, and then we're going to add it to the overall contract. That's great. That's a professional way to handle it. But if you don't sign anything in black and white that states that same thing, people might forget that was said, either like legitimately forget it or conveniently forget it. But either way, that's why we have it in black and white, and why I would recommend that you do something very similar and have the ability to have a contract with the person that you're paying, a contractor in this example. And we even go so far as when we're starting with contractors, like for the first or second project, we'll go over this with them together. Because it's one thing to send this to a contractor via email and they say that they've read it and they sign it, and then you get it back and all seems to be good. And then halfway through the job, something comes up that is not what is agreed to in the contract. And the contractor says, well, I didn't read the contract. And you'd say, well, I sent it to you. You said you read it. You signed it. Here's your signature. Yeah, but I didn't read it. Now, yes, you have recourse in that example, but the goal of a good contract is to not find yourself in mediation or in a courtroom or have attorneys discussing the outcome. It's to keep everyone on track and try to prevent that. So the Independent Contractor Agreement is one of those documents that helps. It's designed to do that. It talks about safety requirements and things of that nature as it relates to your local market. That's why, amongst many other reasons, you want to have a local attorney look at it. Cancellations. What happens if the parties aren't agreeing if you as the owner in this relationship, obviously you own the property, decide you want to go a different direction, what happens? Well, the independent contractor agreement states that if that happens, you as the owner have the right to let that contractor go. And if that happens, they're only entitled to the money for the work that they have completed to that point, okay? And material if it's on the job site, not work that hasn't been done yet or hasn't been started yet that was overall agreed to in the contract. So we're only going to pay them for the work and or material if it's on site that was done or is there at the point that you decide to move on. But that isn't always in a contract. And sometimes I've read contractor contracts where it states the opposite of that. They're entitled to the whole lump sum of the contract, whether they finish the job or not. Now, in my world, that's not the right way to handle it. Okay, so those are some of the important things. It's again the kind of the rules of engagement in the relationship. Guided communication. I met my this is an actual story. I met my wife on eHarmony, and it was an amazing process because they guided you through the communication. Put in all your information, and then you get this kind of guided communication of when to talk, when to respond. And I can't say that's the only reason that it worked out that we got married, but it helped. Guided communication. Okay. Hiring a contractor to do work on your project is definitely not a marriage, but it's a version of a very important relationship that you want to handle the right way. So that's document number 1, the Independent Contractor Agreement, ICA, and that actually also, as you know now, is our term of the week. Now, the second document of the 6 is the scope of work, okay? Now, the scope of work is as long of a document as it needs to be that spells out either with photos, item numbers, listed, layout changes, everything you want done to the home. Okay. So think of a scope of work to your rehab like you would imagine a screenplay is to a movie. Now, if you haven't read a screenplay before, I've seen examples of screenplays, and it doesn't just talk about what people say to each other. It talks about the setting and the background and all these things. So when you were to read it, you could basically see what the movie was going to look like on the big screen. Well, the scope of work should be similar to that. When someone reads it, contractor, it should be very clear what they're bidding on. It should be very clear what they're doing, what they're not doing, etc. So that's what the scope of work is. And that gets initialed when you decide to use a contractor in this relationship and you're signing contracts. That gets initialed for either the entire scope, if that's what they're doing, or their portion of the scope of work. And it gets added to the ICA, Independent Contractor Agreement, as Exhibit A. Okay? Now, excuse me. That's the second critical document of the 6. Number 3. Number 3 is the payment schedule. Okay? Payment schedule is the number 3 critical document. What the payment schedule does is it takes the scope of work that we just talked about and it breaks it up into major benchmarks and milestones and then applies an appropriate payment for that work for that time period. So we pay as work gets done. And that's very important. We don't pay for work that hasn't been done yet. We pay as work gets done. Now, typically speaking, what we do, and you can structure it differently, but typically speaking, we break up the payment schedule on a weekly basis. It's not a weekly draw, though. It's a broken out, predetermined with your contractor, amount of work that's going to get done each week and an appropriate payment for that amount of work. I like weekly because when you're paying someone weekly for the work that they're doing, you have a little bit more of their attention than if you're paying them every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. But this person in this relationship as an independent contractor is not an employee. And that's another thing that the independent contract agreement states. Although you may be paying them every week against a predetermined payment schedule, you have paperwork that states that they're an independent contractor. They're free to do other jobs and probably are doing other jobs, but you happen to be hiring them for that job, for this scope, and that payment schedule. Okay, so that's number 3 is the payment schedule. Very important to help the contractor know what they need to do to get paid, and you know the same thing, so you keep the job moving along. And I do recommend with a new contractor that you create that together. It helps lay out the job. It helps provide accountability to the contractor if and when things don't get done. And it's a very professional way, in my opinion, to start the relationship and to help create buy-in with the contractor. Now, the 4th critical document that we use with our contractors is related to insurance. It's called the Insurance Indentification and Hold Harmless Agreement. It's a mouthful. Say that, 5 times fast. Insurance Indentification and Hold Harmless Agreement. I'm not going to even do it, but it's hard. All right, so the Insurance Indentification and Hold Harmless Agreement is, it's in effect, this got printed onto 2 pages because of the last signature line, but it's a 1-page sheet that states for our business what's the type of insurance that we need, what's the minimum requirements for the liability coverage amounts. It talks about things like they will keep the insurance policy in for full force during the course of the work. It talks about what we need as the owner, you and I, to be able, as far as us being added to their insurance policy as an additional insured, and the job site location being stated on the paperwork as well. And then the contractor signs it, parties to the agreement, address of the home, etc. Now, that's not the only insurance paperwork that we get. That's just one of the 6 critical documents, document number 4. Now, in conjunction with that, kind of call it maybe 4A or 4B, is we do get added to the contractor's insurance policy as a additional insured, which notifies the insurer, insurance company, that they're doing work on our project, and our company name gets added, and then the job site location gets put on that as well. And we get a copy of that being done, having been done before they start work, okay, not after. And then we attach that to the Insurance Indentification and Hold Harmless Agreement, and we attach it to the Independent Contractor Agreement as Exhibit B. So Exhibit B in our contract is the Insurance Indentification and Hold Harmless Agreement, but it's also the 4th critical document in the 6 that we have in our system here within FortuneBuilders. All right, so that's insurance. That's number 4, Insurance Indentification, Hold Harmless Agreement. Now, numero 5, that's number 5, coming at you live, is a tax-related document. And it is something that we sign with our contractors. We don't sign it every job necessarily. If we use a contractor more than once a year, I typically recommend we get this signed once a year with each contractor. Now, the other documents that I'm talking about, have talked about, and will talk about, we get signed with every contractor that we're paying on every job that we hire them for each year, if we use them more than once. This document, the W-9, okay, which is an IRS document, is something that we get signed with our contractors at least once a year, beginning of the year, first time we use them, that they complete. And then we hold that so that at the end of the year, our accountant can 1099 them, which is another tax activity, tax-related activity, can send our contractor a 1099 with the information that they put into the W-9, which in effect notifies the IRS that, us, whoever's, the owner, made these payments to this contractor. This is the total amount. They were an independent contractor, because they are in this relationship, and that person, the contractor, in this discussion that we're having, is responsible for their taxes on that income money that you paid them. Now, if you don't get a W-9 and the information needed there to be able to 1099 them at the end of the year, there are situations where the IRS can come back to you for the contractor's taxes if they don't pay them. Now, I'm pretty sure that everyone listening and watching right now is positive that they don't want to pay someone else's taxes. And in fact, you're probably, depending on what state you live in or what you're doing to minimize your tax liability, are tired of paying your own. But what I can tell you is that you're going to feel not good if you're paying someone else's taxes. So get a W-9 signed with your contractors that you're hiring and paying at least once a year so that you can 1099 them, and your accountant can certainly help with that activity. It's a very common, extremely common activity in the independent contractor relationship, not just as it relates to contractors or general contractors or subcontractors doing construction work, but really in any independent contractor employer relationship. That's something that is done. Okay, so that's a tax-related document. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls listening and watching around the globe, or wherever you're listening from, the sixth critical document is the lien waiver. Yes, I said it, lien waiver. Some call it a final and unconditional waiver of lien. Others might call it a partial and conditional waiver of lien, depending on when you use it. In this relationship of contractor and owner, which is what we're talking about here with regards to real estate and construction, for recourse for contractors that don't get paid or haven't gotten paid, or material suppliers for that matter, is they can file a mechanics lien against a property. So that's a material supplier or contractor's recourse if the owner or whoever's responsible isn't paying them for or hasn't paid them for their services, is they can attach a mechanics lien against the property, which is in effect, it's a cloud on title. Now, title is the chain of ownership that has gone on. If you're selling the home or when you go to sell the home, most people will not buy a property from you unless you have free and clear title. You have the sole responsibility or ability to sell that home, and there's nothing clouding that or changing that. When a mechanics lien gets filed, that changes that free and clear title. And now basically says, hey, hand raise, if you will. This person hasn't paid me yet, and you have to deal with it before you can get free and clear title. Now, this is good to know. Some states, and you should determine this in your state, it's very easy to file a mechanics lien with little or no documentation. Other states, it's not very easy to do it. Either way, it can be done properly and legally by someone that hasn't gotten paid. Now, if it's easier in your state and contractor does it erroneously, which could happen, then you have, if you're following the system I'm talking about of paperwork, you have a clear paper trail of what was and wasn't done. So you can easily handle that. If for some reason they're accurate, well, then that's something went wrong, something went awry, and you have to, you are going to have to help solve that because you need to sell the property and want to sell it free and clear title. I said it already, but I'll say it again because it's noteworthy and worth remembering, is that not only can contractors, general contractors, subcontractors file a lien, material supplier, let's say you hire a subcontractor and they go get material somewhere and they don't pay that material supplier and you don't know about it, they can also attach a lien to a property and cloud your title on your property. Now, do I agree with that kind of reasoning? Well, I mean, as a seller of a property, I wish that wasn't the case, but as a contractor, or in this example, a material supplier, I do, because it's their ability and way to be able to recoup their money. And either way, it needs to be dealt with if that happens. So know that. And you may also want to get this lien waiver signed by material suppliers. So what a final lien waiver, excuse me. Oh man, I get all choked up when I talk about lien waivers. What a lien waiver does, and I'm not going to read it to you or spell out what's in it, but basically what ours says is, hey, look, this person was hired to do this work. The other person paid them to do this work. Both parties are done with this agreement, and the contractor signs it saying they have been paid in full, and they are releasing their ability to lien the property. And it's a very clean way to end the contractual relationship. You can also get one signed by a material supplier if you suspect that you need to, and all subcontractors. And furthermore, if you want to, you can do a partial lien release throughout the course of the project, getting one signed as you make payments. Now, I don't do that with every contractor after we've used them a couple of times, because if I still feel I have to do partial lien releases and verify that they paid their material suppliers, then there's something up, and I'm going to go find a different contractor that's better suited, period. It doesn't mean they're bad or not good. It's just not good for our system. All right. So that's the final and unconditional waiver of lien that we would get signed by any contractor that we paid. We could verify that material suppliers got paid and get one signed too. And it's a nice, neat, clean bookend to the contractual relationship with our general contractor or our subcontractors or whoever we're directly contracting with and making payments to on our projects. All right. So those are the 6, very important, I said, critical documents, which is what we call them in our system here at FortuneBuilders. To summarize again, our term of the week, which was the first critical document, is the independent contractor agreement. It's sort of the holy grail of the relationship, and it spells out amongst 20 some odd points who does what, who doesn't do what happens if something happens, and what everyone needs to do to comply with the relationship. Number 2 is the scope of work, which is the actual work that contractor is being hired to do, spelled out. Number 3 is the payment schedule, which basically kind of subdivides the scope of work with that contractor and says when they're going to get paid, what they're going to do to get paid. Nice, neat, clean layout there so everyone understands how payments are handled. Number 4 is the insurance indentification and hold harmless agreement, which we attach our insurance or a copy of the contractor's insurance to, with us added as an additional insured, job site location added as well. Number 5 is the tax document, which is the W-9 that we would sign at least once a year with a contractor. All the other 5 documents we would sign on every job with every contractor that we're paying. And the 6th and final critical document, everyone listening and watching, is that final lien waiver. So that is the 6 critical documents, which is part of the 7-stage rehab overview that we operate here at CT Homes and that we teach nationally in FortuneBuilders. And it's worked very well over the years. I mean, for the last 20 years now, me personally, and 18 plus here with CT Homes, I've been rehabbing homes, and every day of my life in some way, shape, or form has revolved. Some piece of it has had to do with managing contractors, because we've always had rehabs going on during that time period. What I can tell you is not every day is like cupcakes and roses in general, not just dealing with contractors. But what I also know is that when you have good paperwork and you have good communication, and good paperwork creates good communication, your relationship can be better starting out, can grow faster, can be stronger over time, and can help weed out, the types of people that you don't want to work with, and also highlight those that you do want to work with. So that's what I wanted to cover today, folks, and a very important snippet of system within our community, so you can become more familiar. For those of you that are rehabbing, for those of you that are thinking about rehabbing, for those of you that know someone that's rehabbing, this is really what you should be doing. So that's the topics today, ladies and gentlemen. Super pumped for everyone to be watching and listening. Be sure that you share, comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff to throw back some feedback to us and share the message that we're helping to create and the education that we're putting out there. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Appreciate it. Guess what? Going to see you on another podcast very, very soon. Talk to you later.